Tonight, we are going to talk about a 3-minute pitch. This is designed for those people that would like to plan to participate in Start Peninsula, our 4th micro pitch competition. It is sold out, as it always is. We have our 2 alternates. Those are also lined up and ready to go, but this is applicable to anybody for any pitch that you have, regardless of where you are or who you're pitching to. So these are the basic core elements, and we're going to jump right into it. The way that tonight is going to work, first thing is we're going to talk about is the elements of the pitch. So we'll talk about the foundation, what goes into that. Then once we're done with that, then we can get into some further questions. And for those that would like to practice their pitch, gives you an opportunity to do that, and that we will provide feedback for you. This is, want to remind everyone, or if this is your first time watching this, that this is a safe zone. There is no judgment made for anybody. Everyone is good enough to be here, and no one is too good otherwise. So if you have not done a pitch before, what I would recommend is grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And when we start talking about the different things, you can just write down answers to the questions that we're going to pose. What that will do is that will formulate an outline of your pitch. And then when it comes down to practice or feedback, and then it's just a matter of just writing or reading what you had written down on that piece of paper. And that gives you a good idea and estimate in terms of how quick 3 minutes is. And you can see how then things have to be juggled, shifted, expanded, cut, all of the above to make that 3-minute pitch a very a nice, succinct story that you want to share with people that may be interested in you and your business. All that to say, before we get too far down this road, who are we? Who are the ones that are putting on this Pitch Perfect class, and why should you listen to us? I am Tim Ryan. I am the program manager, if you will, for lack of better terms, for Start Peninsula. We have been doing this for 12 years, and this started as a need because when we first did Start Peninsula, quite honestly, the pitches were really, really bad. So we were like, how can we fix that? So we designed this Pitch Perfect class. It's worked out really, really well. I have built a couple, an incubator in Williamsburg. That's where I met Gary. He'll introduce himself in a moment. I am currently the executive director for Innovate Hampton Roads, do a lot within the entrepreneurial community. And I am also an angel investor myself. I've invested in somewhere 30-ish companies. So I can give you the perspective of what it's like as an investor, what I am looking for in order to write a check, what other investors are looking for in order for them to write a check. And I provide the business side. Gary provides the performance side. So Gary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Gary, and last name Plaag. I have been working with Tim for many years. I think since about 2016, we've been working on this Start Peninsula thing together and doing all kinds of fun things about that. And my background, as Tim said, is more in performance and presentations and helping people to really show the best they can when they are in front of other people. How do they tell their story so their story gets listened to? And so I do that in my business. I have a business about 25 years old, and I continue to do that. I do it around the world, and I'm happy to share it in this Start Peninsula environment. Hopefully that's enough.
That is perfect, Gary. I couldn't have said it better myself, which is why I had you say it.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we'll jump in, but just be advised, Gary has a superpower that he did not mention in his introduction, and he has the ability to apply great pressure on those to practice. It's once we're done with this presentation. He does it every time. Last time we ran out of time before we just as time expired, the last person did their practice round. So
yeah, I'm here to get people to lean into the discomfort. just might as well get it over with right here, and then you don't have to worry about it at the pitch.
So that said, let's break down what 3 minutes looks like. And as we do this, want to say that this is not, it's not like baking in the sense of if it's a 1 teaspoon versus 1 tablespoon that it's going to mess everything up. This is just a guideline, an outline to show you what 3 minutes is all about and how you should at least structure that initial pitch that you're doing. So first thing that we recommend doing is is coming out with that attention getter. 10 seconds may not be that long, but it could be a quote, it could be a stat, it could be anything that is going to get your attention other than, hi, my name is Tim, or how is everybody doing tonight? We want to start with something to get their attention because they're not going to care unless you give them a reason to care. No better way to do it than with an attention getter. Once we have their attention, then we're going to talk about the problem or the opportunity. So you could take 50 seconds to talk about that. This is something that is, mind you, this is right off of the judging rubric for those that are participating in Start Peninsula. So you're being evaluated on the problem, how well you can describe that problem. As we go through these slides, we're going to talk about different ways to describe that problem in the way that it should be described. Once we've identified what the problem is, then we can jump right into the solution. Equal amount of time for the solution, 50 seconds. Word to those that are new at this, it's much easier to talk about the problem than it is the solution. A lot of people are very heavy on the problem because it's easy to point out things that are wrong. It's a little bit more challenging to talk about why you're going to be the person to solve that problem. So then now you have everyone's attention. You talked about the problem, you talked about the solution. Now, so they have a reason to care, you can talk about who you are, what is your name, what is the name of the company. So you can take 10 seconds to do that. Your company one-liner, you're going to be labeled, you're going to have a one-liner at the end of this night, whether if you like it or not. Go ahead and give your company the one-liner so that it's just easier that way. We've seen the opposite end of that. So you're going to be the person that remembered for great things. Then we have the target market. 50 seconds to talk about who you're marketing to. And again, this may seem like a lot, but we're going to dissect what all these different things are and what they represent. Now you have your closing statement. That is 10 seconds. That could, again, a company one-liner, repeat who you are, what it is that you're doing. So that company one-liner, that is like a one-sentence summary of what it is that you do. And the goal is to make them want more. We don't want to try to pack 10 minutes of information into a 3-minute pitch. It doesn't work. So the goal is to get that second meeting. That is what it's all about. And that's your 3 minutes. So it's just that simple. When I talk about the fact that this is the rubric is the problem, the solution, your target market, and then your pitch quality. It's just those 4 categories. And if I remember right, you're evaluated 1 through 10, 1 through 5, one of the two. The judges will follow that rubric, and that's all there is to it. Gary, is there anything that you would like to add, or we can jump right in?
No, I think that's good.
Cool. All right. So the secret sauce, what it comes down to your pitching, and why we have the categories the way they are. Because if there is no problem, then there is not a need. And if there is no solution, then you don't have a product. And if you don't have a market, then you're not going to have any growth. No traction is a nice way of saying you don't have any customers, no model, no money, no team, no execution, no performance, no memory. So we'll dive into all these things, but the first 3, product, market, problem, solution, market, those are again, the things that you're being evaluated against. Your traction, your model is just, who are your customers? Have you talked to anybody? Have you interviewed anybody? How are you going to make money? Are you a subscription company? Is it a product or a service that you're selling? Your team is going to be a very, very important piece. And then the performance aspect, your pitch is a performance. I mean, it is not just getting up there and just talking, regurgitating numbers, specifications, what it is, it's reading your slides. It is a performance, and you need to ensure that you perform so that you can be remembered. The
Yeah, I think
performance
I'll just jump
aspect.
in real quick. I think we like
Yeah.
to say that in my business, that you have 3 seconds to make a first impression, good or bad, your choice. And if it doesn't look like from the very beginning that in those first 3 seconds that you have it together, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, you have your story down, no one has to worry about you. But you do want to elicit uh, or get the audience to have a reaction to your pitch, and the reaction that you do not want is pity. That's not a good emotional response of them feeling bad for you. So the more that you know your stuff and come right out of the gate looking confident, knowing that you know your stuff, and you're going to walk them through only the things you need to walk them through, and you don't have to rush. There's no hurry. The better you know it, the more designed it is, the clearer it is, the easier it is for you to make an impact on the things you need to hit, so that you gain more interest moving forward. So
Yep. And then furthering that from the performance aspect is that people are visual learners. And so when I say it's not a matter, it's not a contest to see how many numbers you can remember, what specifications that your product may have. People are visual learners, and we're telling you, take the people listening along that journey. Put that is so that they can put themselves in the shoes of the person that you are talking about. Hi, I would like to introduce you to Gary. Gary suffers this particular problem. And then people are then, because we're visual, we start putting ourselves in that place. And then we tell the story of how that user uses your product. And then they are going to remember that story above all else. I mean, I have heard thousands of pitches. I remember many of them, at least the ones that tell the story, because that's just the way that we're wired as humans. I mean, it's the crocodile brain, fight or flight. It all goes back to that. So we remember all of those aspects. So we're showing, we're not telling. So again, we're not trying to get fancy and trying to get technical. We want to show, don't tell. Stories sell, numbers tell. First thing we're going to talk about now is the problem. So this is that first 50 seconds. And some things to consider there is not to exceed that 50 seconds. And I alluded to that before. It's really, really easy to talk about the problem. As you're practicing this, you should have an internal clock, or like that knows where you should be at certain periods of time. So people in radio, they talk about that when they're doing their spots. The same thing here. So don't exceed the 50 seconds. But how big is the problem? That's where how many people suffer from this? What is the cost of the amount of money that is lost because we're not doing or solving this particular problem? What we're trying to show here is that you want to show how well you know this problem, and then demonstrating the need. So when it comes to if you have the next version of Zillow, you know what the housing market looks like, and perhaps you want to segment that into single family homes that are 2,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet. You know how big that market is. You know how big the problem is. How many people of that market are suffering that problem. So now what you're doing is you're demonstrating the problem. You're building that credibility with the people that you're presenting to, that you are the subject matter expert in this, and that because I know this problem so well, I am the one that's going to be able to solve this problem. So we're building that credibility. And as we're describing this, and Gary can add on to this, you have to pass your mom test with the problem and the solution. So I just heard several pitches this afternoon, and some of them made it really, really technical in terms of like when it comes to power turning, using methane to create hydrogen to power electric vehicles and electric aircraft. And it was like they started getting into numbers, and it was just like the average person doesn't understand that. But if you simplify that so that it was like, hey, we take methane and then we use that to convert that into power so that we can then charge electric vehicles and aircraft, that is much, much easier to comprehend than it is if you're going way down in the weeds in terms of how to describe what that problem is.
Yeah, just to dig a little deeper, the mom test for everybody is, would your mother understand what you were talking about? And when I was in the IT business, my mother never understood what I was talking about. So I had to figure out a way for her to understand it and be able to speak at her level. And so sometimes when we get real passionate about this great solution we have for this problem that we're passionate about solving, then we get all in the weeds and nobody can understand. There's jargon like crazy, and if people aren't in your space, they don't understand it. So that's what we mean by does it pass the mom test? Would your mom, who's not involved in your business or your idea, understand what you're talking about?
Yeah, and I think the most famously Steve Jobs is the one that's always remembered when he first introduced the iPod. When you have a thousand CDs in your pocket or whatever it was, I mean, like that was something that people understood and they remember that. All right. So the solution, like I said, no solution, and there's no product. So I want you to think about the idea and the innovation behind what it is that you're doing. And when it comes to talking about the solution, especially when you're in a pitch type of environment, when you have judges, remember that the audience does not know your business. You're living this, you're in it every single day, and you really have to take a step back and describe your solution in a way so that people understand it. Keeping in mind, we only have 50 seconds to talk about this solution, but just as a reminder, people don't know you and they don't know your business. Talk about how you are different or how you are better than what the status quo is. How much better is your solution? And there, I want you to think about the 10x. So we are creatures of habit. We do what we do every single day. And if you are starting a business and if you want someone to change that behavior that they already have established, you need to do it 10 times better than what is currently being done today. So in order to change someone's behavior. So thinking about how is that 10 times better, and talking about it better, just the cliche, better, cheaper, faster. I don't like it when people differentiate themselves on price, but how much better is it? How much faster is it? Is it the team that makes it better? Whatever the case is, but think 10x. The example I used last time was if you look at Tesla, they knew that if EVs were going to be adopted by mass market, those EVs needed to be 10 times better. So how do they make it 10 times better? There's zero emissions. You have a better environment. You're not polluting. It's cheaper than gas. There's no maintenance. There's no parts that break down. So they knew out of the gate, their business model was selling the car. That's where they make their money up front. Parts and service is not part of their revenue model. They don't want it part of their revenue model. They knew they had to do this 10 times better than what was currently out there, or else people would not consider adopting EVs. So that's one example of how Tesla implemented the 10x solution. Another way that you can talk about your solution is talking about your team. A lot of people skip over the team aspect of it. this is an area for you to showcase your strengths, and the team behind it talk about the years of experience that you have, talk about if you all have patents, if you have um, your patent application in, if you are one of the very few industry experts in that particular field, if even if you are a second or third time entrepreneur and the first time or second time did not go well, I view that as a strength. That I do not view that as a weakness. The things that you learned the first time and second time, as an investor, I know that they're not going to make those mistakes that second or third time. So that is a strength, and you can own that in the sense of, hey, this isn't my first time doing this. I learned a lot along the way, and now I know how to do it more efficiently and smarter than I ever have done it before. But this is your opportunity to talk about why you are the person or the team to solve this particular problem. Why, I mean, it's you. No one else is able to do it like we are. I mean, let that passion come out and show the people that you're presenting to, the audience, why you are the ones to make that happen. And we'll expand a little bit on the why aspect here in a future slide. But the marketability aspect, this is where we talked a little bit before about identifying your customer. Who is it that you want to go after? Who are the people that you know that suffer or feel that pain point, and demonstrate your understanding of the size of the market. So your total addressable market. What I want you to do is I want you to dig in a little deeper. I don't want you to just go to Google and say and Google what is the market size of real estate in the United States, and then when it comes back with $3 trillion, you say that that you're going after a $3 trillion real estate market. That's what's called a top-down TAM, and you want to go bottom up. So like I said before, maybe you're going after townhomes, maybe you're going after homes that are 2,500 square feet and smaller. Think about that segment that you want to go after, and then look at that as your total addressable market. That's going to build credibility. That's going to show that you're the expert. It's going to show that you've done your research, and you're putting everything into it. You're not being lazy. That's not to say that when you do that initial research, what you thought may be a $10 billion market, that may turn out to be a $100 billion market, but you have to start very, very focused, and then you can expand further. So an example of people that started way smaller than what anyone thought and that grew is Uber and Airbnb. Everyone thought that Uber was competing against taxis, and everyone thought Airbnb was competing against hotels, neither of which were the case. When you think about how Uber then grew into grocery delivery and your Uber Eats and all of that market, that expanded everything in ways that no one ever thought before. Then in terms of once you understand who your market is, do you have any customers? Who have you talked to? And if you don't have any customers, that's okay. Have you interviewed people? Have you asked people what their opinion is? The customers are going to tell you everything that you need to know. It happened to me just last week. Very successful founder. I use a platform instead of Zoom for my webinar meetings. I started adopting that. Turns out I'm a power user. They understood that I'm a power user. Next thing you know, I'm getting an email invitation to meet with the CEO so that he could interview me about how I use the product. So know who your customers are, talk to them, find out how they're using it, what their input is, and leverage that and talk and share that with your judges and the people that you're talking to. As you're talking to them, how are you delighting those customers? that you have 10 customers and you have 5-star reviews from all of those customers, and they said that they couldn't live without your product. Whatever the case is, yeah, those how you're delighting those customers and how and any testimonials or whatever. Not saying that when you have these on your slides that you have to read every single testimonial. We can get into some slideology later, but all that stuff can be on your slide, and then the people can read that as you're talking. We talked to 10 people. This is some of the feedback that they had. Next, and we keep on pressing. Anything we want to add before we got to go into execution, Gary?
Nope, we're
Okay.
good.
So I guess before I go into execution, like these are all things as we're asking all these questions, this is what I'm saying. You can write these things down. The problem that I'm solving is, the solution that I have is, do I have, I have 10 customers. I'm delighting them in such and such ways. So just answering those questions is going to help you formulate your pitch, and then we can continue to add takeaway and shuffle the deck, so to speak. Everything is about execution. And this is a lot of what we're talking about, I mean, especially when it comes to the judging aspect. It's going to be about the solution and how well you're going to execute. Do they think that you're going to the people? Do they think that you're the ones that are going to make this happen? So what is your why? Why are you the person that is going into this business? Why are you the founder of this business? And I'm telling you, the answer cannot be money. You have to have a really deep why, because as soon as you get punched in the face, then you're going to find that, and if money is your why, you're going to find another thing that seems to be easier to make that money. So that is a red flag. If you say money is your motivator, your why is what's going to get you out of bed in the morning when you've had a bad day, a bad week, you lost an employee, you lost a customer, whatever the case is. You need to understand what that why is, and you need to explain that why and lean into it. And then once you understand that why, how are you going to make that a reality? That no matter what, you are the person, you are the team that's going to make that happen. Because the investors invest in people more than they invest in the idea. You're betting on the jockey, not the horse. Ideas are worthless. It's all in the execution. Like at the end of the
Tim,
day.
and I would, and I'd just add that, as this goes a bit beyond just the pitch thing, but when you're starting your own thing, there are going to be sleepless nights, and what is, I think the why really is focusing on what is your drive, what is your passion, what is it about this that makes you willing to not eat or not sleep or do things without getting paid a whole lot of money in the beginning, at least. Are you willing, and I notice I didn't say want, but are you willing to go through the hard times? And that's what we need to know. What is or the judges need to know, what is your passion? How passionate are you to make this work? Or are you just pitching every other idea until one sticks? And not really being behind anything. So that's the idea here, is they want to see that you are driven by this. And even if, as Tim says, you get punched in the face, you're still going to keep trying.
Yeah, and some other ways, that, is this your full-time gig? Are you doing this 16 hours a day? The answer doesn't have to be yes. But, at the same time, it can't be an hour a day or some side hustle thing that you're not serious. Yeah, or it doesn't necessarily, when you're up against someone who is, this is my full-time, this gets my full-time attention. I have invested X amount of dollars of my own personal money into this, and I am going to make this happen. This sounds very different than, this is something that I'm exploring. We're hoping with the ones that we're going to be able to do it, but I'm not going to be able to do anything more than what I'm currently doing unless you give me $50,000 to do it. Yeah, that's not going to gain you any favors. So those are other ways in terms of, this is how we're going to execute this. I'm putting everything that I have behind it, and no matter what, it's going to happen. Another aspect is the why now. It's funny. I think that I just saw that Netflix discontinued their DVD service today. But like, so for those that some people may not even realize, there was a DVD service when Netflix first started. It was not Wi-Fi, and so they were able to pivot. They weren't able to do that back in the day because there was the bandwidth was not there to support digital downloads. So at that time, when they made that pivot, the why now is that we now have the bandwidth in order to make that happen. Same thing like YouTube wasn't able to happen without cheap video, cheap storage. Uber was not able to happen without the smartphone. So the why now aspect is a really, really big thing. So right now we see everything AI is dominating all the headlines. We're able to do things now that we were never able to do before. And why now? It's because, well, a lot of times AI is going to be that new reason. So timing has a lot to do with everything. Timing is probably just as important, if not more so, than luck and hard work. But in terms of other things that you may need other than timing and luck, lean into those things. So this is where some things that you want to consider. I love entrepreneurship because everybody's willing to help everybody win. We want to see each other win. But if you don't share what it is that you need, then nobody knows how they can help you. So that said, your vulnerability is a strength. Lean into that vulnerability. And I know that it sounds really, really counterintuitive because in order to be a founder, you need to be strong and alpha, and you have to, you're the captain of the ship that is going to lead this into an unknown destination. But there also needs to be some vulnerability there. If you need help in certain areas, say that you need help, and you'll be amazed at how many people will come and help you if you just ask. And at the same time, I'm always saddened when businesses fail because they were too proud to ask for that same help. Gary.
Yeah, we got some tricks. Actually, they're just habits, but we have some tricks that'll help you. So the old story is, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. So that's very true here as well. If you want to do well at the pitch, you got to practice. And a lot of people wait until way too late, and they attempt to be creative, and it's hard to be creative in a hurry. And they also put it off and put it off and put it off and don't prepare very well, and they don't practice. They don't have a chance to do that. So one thing about practicing is that, and I'll just make this point, don't be sure that the night of the pitch, that it will probably even a week before, or if you at least a few days before, make sure you have things loaded. You've been practicing with them. If you have videos, you have them loaded and you're practicing with them, and your slides you're practicing with, just so that everything that you have that you're going to be using on the big performance, that it's been rehearsed and you've done it over and over and over, and almost made a habit of the routine of how you're going to explain your story. So that's the really even more nuts and bolts to the practice, is get your stuff done early so you can do that. Things you don't want to start with, don't start with asking a question. It wastes time. You can do that. It's a good way to start a presentation. It's just not this presentation. So we want to use the right tool for the right presentation. This one, you only have 3 minutes. It's really timed. It could be a rhetorical question, like you could, knowing you're not going to get an answer, you could say something like, imagine if you were this and blah, 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 and what would you do? Well, this is what you would probably do, blah, 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 blah. But don't ask a question and then wait for an answer. because that's not going to happen. Number two, don't start with your name. Don't start with, hi, my name is Gary and I have a business that does X, Y, and Z. Do that later, but use some kind of tool to get our attention. It could be a story. It could be a statement of fact. It could be a statistic of some kind that's a startling statistic, but not your name. Put your name in a little bit later. And plus your name is on your slide. It's on your background in the pitch contest, at least in our pitch contest. And the judges know your name, and people who are watching might want to see your name. So, but I would just put your name later. When you go through and you have enough time to practice, you want to look at everything that you have in slides, everything you're going to say. Don't be afraid to delete things that are irrelevant to your story. So I have a buddy who is a speechwriter on Capitol Hill, and he often says, he says, I'm the cleverest guy. I write the best speeches for my congressman or my senator. But if you're going to be a writer, you have to be willing to what they call kill your darlings. The things that you think are the best, or the funniest, or the best line, or whatever it is. If it doesn't fit, you got to be willing to kill it. And that's the same here. Got to be willing to kill anything that is irrelevant to your story, because we only have a limited amount of time. And as Tim mentioned before, it's a performance and it's a story. And for the reasons that Tim also mentioned before, that facts tell and stories sell. And for some reason, the way that we as humans are wired, people love to hear stories. And as long as the story isn't too long, it can be very, very, very helpful. So for every slide, if you make a slide, you're using slides, every slide that you do, every line that you add to the slide, does it enhance the story or does it detract from the story? Really have to ask yourself those questions. And that's that whole idea of, is it helping or is it hurting? And so does it enhance the story or does it detract from the story? So those are the really things to ask. And if you've practiced enough, then you'll have an opportunity to go through that. But Gary, how do you practice? Well, a good way to practice is if you have access to Zoom, and I think you can sign up for a free account and you get it for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. And if you have that free version, then just set yourself up a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting or whatever you can do and record yourself and doing your pitch and then go back and watch it. Or record it on your cell phone and go back and watch it. Notice what I'm saying, record it and then go back and watch it. And that's the part that people don't do because they say it's embarrassing. It's so humiliating. I'm looking at myself. Well, yeah, you need to know what it looks like for other people to look at you because they're seeing what you're doing and you're the only one that's not seeing it. So you want to be sure that you know what the audience is seeing. And you can be confident in that, but it only happens if you give yourself enough lead time and you have enough time to practice. So you want to do that. And when you practice too, when you watch the video, play back the video and watch it, you can see that I just said that and it's irrelevant. And I really need to say this because that didn't even come out right. Or that's a word that I don't know how to say very well. I always get tongue-tied when I say it. So how about I change it to an easier word that I don't have to worry about that during the presentation, during the stage time. So those are some ideas that will help you. They're just tricks that we see lots of people make errors in that are sometimes unrecoverable. And if you can avoid that, if Tim and I can help you to avoid that, then it feels a lot better and we feel a lot more successful. We feel like you're a lot more successful and you'll even feel more successful and more confident. So.
Yeah, another thing too, and we can get into some slideology stuff as well, is Gary and I we're telling you, spend 80 or 90% of your time on what you're going to say, and then the 10 to 20% on your slides, as opposed to all of your time on the slides and not thinking about what you're going to say. That's another sure way that you're going to run out of time. If you just get up, then you're just going to read your slides. And if you read your slides, you can read much faster than you can talk. And one, nobody wants to hear someone read slides to you. And two, you're going to run out of time. Three, when you're being evaluated on how well you pitch, chances are you're going to not score so well in that category. Gary,
And
what?
also, I would say I highly recommend that. We've had 3 of these pitch competitions this year, and there are some people in every one of them who perform out in an outstanding manner. That usually the people who win are the ones who perform really, really well, and they've done their work. And then but there's 10 pitchers in each one of those things, and 7 of the 10 don't move past there, and they don't get to go. They don't make it to the next site. So go look at all of them. Go back and look at the videos. You can see who the 3 winners are, and you can see who the ones aren't, who didn't get through, and really suggest that you go and watch those, because that will tell you a whole lot more than what Tim and I can tell you. You'll see it in action.
Yeah.
And the majority of the people who do make it through, 2 out of 3 usually have gone to Pitch Perfect and really worked their time and spent the time rehearsing and practicing. And it's very clear who, I just heard this the other day too. It comes back to me all the time that we always say that practice makes perfect, but that's not true. Practice makes permanent, and perfect practice makes perfect. So if you're practicing, whatever you're practicing is going to become permanent. So make sure you're practicing good stuff and spend the time to make sure that all that stuff's laid out. And then make sure that you have time. I would say at least a couple of hours over the course of days before the pitch, have some time to just practice your stuff, be settled with it, and then just practice it.
Yeah. Another thing, as you're practicing, practice in front of anybody and everyone that will listen to you for 3 minutes. And then what I want you to do is anytime that someone asks a question because they're confused or they don't understand, write down what those questions are. And then after you've done this pitch or this performance several times, if you're getting the same questions over and over and over again, that means that you have a hole in your pitch. And you need to address that in your pitch before it's asked. What will happen is once someone gets confused, then they stop listening because their mind is trying to solve that question that they have in their mind. They want to find the answer, and then they're no longer listening anymore.
They're caught in a cognitive dissonance loop that they can't get out of, because they're trying to justify what they just heard, and now they're not listening to anything else that you say. And the judges are they're susceptible to that as well, because they may not know what it is you're talking about. If I can add to that too, Tim, is that think about really hard questions that the judges might ask you. And if you go back and watch the other pitch competitions, you will hear the kinds of questions the judges ask, because they ask everybody 3 questions, and they're often not the same 3 questions. And when somebody does a really good job on their pitch, listen to the type of questioning you get. And if it's not a very strong pitch, you're going to get some really easy, cursory kinds of questions that help you to exit the stage gracefully, because we don't want anybody to feel bad. So really look at the questions that the finishers got, and you'll hear them as a bit more in depth, a bit more focused, and not just an easy softball question. So think about that. Also think about, what is a question I'm most terrified they're going to ask me, and figure out what those are, what the answers are.
One thing that's really interesting. So I mentioned before, we started doing Pitch Perfect 12 years ago because we needed a mechanism for the pitches to improve, and the pitches continue to get better. I mean, it's amazing how good the pitches are now. In the last micro pitch, something happened that had never happened before. And so if you're, as I discussed earlier, 50 seconds for the problem, 50 seconds for the solution, 50 seconds for the market. And you need to make sure that those are well balanced. They can't be completely lopsided. So what happened at the last micro pitch competition, it comes down to like, all right, we interviewed for a open position, and then you had 3 candidates that were all really, really qualified. And then you had to figure out which one was the most qualified of the 3 that were already qualified. And so then they started looking at, all right, here's the problem, here's the solution. And then it came down to who talked about the solution and who's identified the solution and is going to execute on that solution better than the other ones. And that's how the determination was made. So there needs to be a balance about how you talk about and how you address the different things within your pitch. The other aspect, and then we can open up to your questions, is typically someone will always, in Q&A, someone will either answer the questions and get themselves into the top 3, or vice versa. They will not do well in the Q&A, and then they will lose out on their spot in the top 3. Happens more often than not. But if you anticipate the questions that scare you, typically, and the people that attend Pitch Perfect, you do well in the Q&A because you're prepared, and then you're able to speak from the heart, and it's not scripted. Whereas people that only memorize or are reading off of a script and that's all they know, and then when the Q&A happens and they're totally caught off guard and they don't know how to answer, then they don't do well. Then the last thing, don't try something new the night of the pitch. Practice, practice, practice. I mean, it's Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it's going to go wrong. So practice.
Well, gosh, Tim, that was a lot of information. Could you recap what you told us tonight?
Yeah. So again, no problem, no need. If there's no solution, there's no product. If there's no market, there's no growth, no traction, means no customers, no model, no money, no team, no execution, no performance, no memory. One quick aside about the no model, no money. That really holds true for that's looking ahead. When you make it through in November, they're gonna add the part of that rubric is your revenue model. But I want you to start thinking about that now, and just in terms of, hey, is it subscription based? Is it a product or a service? Is it a marketplace? Whatever the case might be, but just start thinking about what that model is. And a lot of times when the judges understand that vision and they're buying into that story, a popular question is, so tell me how do you make money? You need to know. But that's it for slides.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're
Very
welcome.
helpful.
Bye.
Take care.
But